Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Heritage Homestead. My name is Natalie, and I am so glad you're here today. It's been raining all spring, which means the creeks and the ponds are filling up, and the grass continues to grow, and the flowers are blooming everywhere. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, mornings are just my favorite. I love spending quiet time out here before I get my day started with the children. It brings a lot of clarity to my mind, and this is where I make plans and dream big, and I get a head start on the day and everything else that's going on in our lives. It's funny, sometimes in the morning I'll think about the things that my grandfather used to say, and one of those things is, there's a whole nother day in front of noon when you get up before dawn. And he was right. Mornings truly are the best. In the last video, I talked about rotating your pantry, how I feed my family all year, storage and systems of bulk food buying. And at the end of that video, I promised you that I would be talking about the new and exciting thing that we are building on the farm. And I wanted to share a little bit about how that is personal to me. So the new and exciting thing that we're building is a pond. Adding another water source makes me extremely happy, and this is something that Jason and I have been planning and praying about since we've lived here, and the day has finally come. One thing that I would define my personality to be like is a memory maker. I've been this way as far back as I can remember, and I believe everything we experience as a family, I like to make it meaningful for the kids. I like to make it memorable for my husband and I, and just everybody as a unit. It doesn't matter if even friends are joining us. I just love making memories together. For my children in particular, I love making whatever we're doing teachable moments about who we are, the decisions that affects our life, the lessons we learn from whatever it is that we're experiencing together. And what I've also realized about myself is that when you have my particular personality, living life to its fullest, it really lends itself to a more tender side of remembering yesteryear. I grew up in a self-employed family. Both of my grandfathers were farmers, but they also ran their own businesses. So for instance, my one grandfather was a dairy farmer. He milked morning and night, and he also upholstered. So if he wasn't milking, you could probably guarantee that he was out in the shop upholstering something. And just a couple miles down the road were my other grandparents. That grandfather did beef cattle, crop land, and he also did excavation. So I grew up watching him dig a lot of ponds, basements, trenches, move tons of dirt, clearing trees, you name it. It was life. The smell of dirt can take me back to either disking the fields or digging another pond. It reminds me of running in the creek bed while Grandpa worked in the heat right next to us. Dust flying everywhere, the sound of the tracks moving back and forth, smoothing the pond bank out, they're all etched in my memory. You could always count on Grandma bringing ham sandwiches to any job site. We would climb up in the dozer and sit in the chair and eat our sandwich. Then we would walk along the tracks of the dozer while the guys would eat. We would be so filthy by nightfall. So a lot of my childhood is connected to the outdoors, which is probably why you can find me on any given day doing something outside, whether I'm in the garden, I love to hang laundry outside, hiking with my kids in the mountains, anything like that. So the morning of that we were scheduled to dig the pond, I heard our friend pull up in his truck, and I had just finished cleaning up breakfast. So I decided that I wanted to see the start of this pond, and I was really excited for it. So I put my boots on and headed over the hill. A few of the kids had ran ahead of me and wanted to see the excitement. So the minute I got over that hill and I saw that first tree go down, I had to stop. I literally stopped walking. and I felt this huge lump in my throat. I had to stop and ask myself, what in the world is going on? Because I had so many flooding thoughts. First, I knew I was just completely overwhelmed with excitement because this was a huge answer to prayer. And then on the other hand, just thinking of how my grandpa died in that tragic way just made me extremely sad. Sad for him, sad that he wasn't here, and sad that he couldn't be a part of this because I just had assumed that one day either he or my dad would be digging the pond for us, but that is not the case. And so I just kept staring at the dozer. This machine is like the exact model that they used in their business. And I was just overwhelmed with, these, I don't know, these tugging thoughts that were both good and bad. It was really interesting because I was fine when we walked the land. We agreed on a price. We agreed where it should go because we had several places that, it could go. I watched him unload the dozer off the lowboy. I did not expect to have any emotion but excitement and was completely caught off guard when I was overcome by different emotions, both joyous and sadness. It was at this point when I realized that this experience became really personal to me, way more than I expected it to. I must be wired to own every emotion attached to a memory. I just feel deeply about things that matter to me. And I think it's wise to stop and be open to the lesson that we're supposed to be learning rather than push emotion away. And of course, I'm still standing at the top of the hill trying to unpack what all of this meant in my head and versus my heart. And I'm staring at this dozer still pushing trees over while Jason's looking at me from the bottom of the hill saying, "Are you coming down?" And I'm just standing there frozen stiff, just trying to process all of this change going on. And yet I realize in that same moment that some things don't change much at all. I was excited for this change. I prayed for this to happen. It was bringing me back to a concept that I always seem to be experiencing in my life. It is that good and bad run on parallel tracks and they both arrive at the same time. And as I stood there still, I could tell that my thoughts were trying to work itself out as I was juggling missing what was familiar to me and at the same time what my reality was now with my own children. There were just so many metaphors attached to so many memories. And I want to say that I believe with all my heart that there is a time where it is okay to cry tears of sorrow and sadness because of the things that we may miss or what's familiar to us. And in that same breath, I think it's appropriate to cry tears of joy because there are so many things that we can be thankful for in this life. When we reflect on broken relationships and what they mean, reflecting on what we have learned through that process, being self aware of disappointment or sadness, it's really helpful to walk ourselves through how to come out with a positive perspective on that rather than harboring any resentments. I think it's perfectly human to go through a gamut of thoughts and emotions, but as long as we deeply feel all of those memories and know that it teaches us something about life and about ourselves, this helps us grow into the people who can give love without any strings attached. And because I've experienced this a lot in my life, I really believe that we can embrace sorrow and joy to run hand in hand together. So if I sit back and view all of this like it is a story that God has not finished writing yet, it's truly the way I want to live my life because I want to embrace whatever life hands me. It is a reality that we cannot control the ups and downs that come. Therefore, we don't have to justify our human tendency to be sad about any difficult relationship or a memory that represents a hard truth. I think it's better to embrace the good, throw out the bad, and be grateful for the lessons we've learned. So, if you struggle in an area that you have not found freedom in, remember, embrace who you are and that it's best to deeply feel those emotional struggles. I'd rather be the one walking myself through those thoughts than pushing them away, only to become a bitter person. So let's be better people. That is growth. That is how we mature over time, because maturing with others brings us to an awareness that it is not our job to reform those who have greatly hurt us. Those are heart changes, like real deep heart changes. And that can only happen within, but only God can do that. I think one way when we are deeply affected by a difficult relationship, one way that I have found healing is to connect with those that we love, and especially those that have, been put in our lives by God. I think that there's purpose in that. It grounds us to reality. It keeps us on our own growth trajectory, and it helps maintain our focus on what's truly important in this life. So don't be afraid to deeply connect with those that are around you. We need to be a community of people who are committed to failing forward. There's nothing wrong with that. Commitment to remaining relationally attentive to each other and keeping our perspective a positive one. I want my focus and concentration on those that I can be of good influence, namely my children. I am determined to do what is right by them because it is not about me. I want a peaceful home, and I want to be a person who can embrace the joys and the sorrows as a gift. And those were just some of my thoughts as I walked myself back up the hill that day to the house. Today, I'm going to sit and watch this land go from a beautiful forest to a water source for our animals. I'm going to embrace the good, and I'm going to throw out the bad. And I'm also going to marvel at how God cares about the tiniest of details and how He has allowed my growth through much difficulty.